So here we are back in my kitchen, Keto Naturopath kitchen, and today I'm making a keto crab pie. Now on the recipe says it's a crustless keto crab pie because I have been making it crustless. I got this recipe from my sister about 20 years ago, and this is what we've had for our Christmas Eve dinner for the past 20 years. I used to make it with the normal crust and it was great. Then we started making it with gluten-free crusts. And then with keto, it was like, well, I don't like any of the keto crusts made with nut flours or anything. So then it was a crustless crab pie. And I love it. I don't really need a crust. However, today I'm going to try something different and you will see why. We're pretty much dairy-free, so we don't like to eat a lot of cheese even when we do have cheese. So I'm going to give you the amounts for the normal recipe. However, I use twice as much crab meat and half the amount of cheese because when we make it with what the recipe says, it's way too cheesy for us and we don't like it. So that's my adaptation, but I'm going to give you the amounts of the recipe for one crab meat pie. So you start off with 8 ounces of crab meat. I get this crab meat, it's pasteurized, it is wild caught. I get this at my local Harris Teeter. Crab meat's very expensive, and this is the least expensive place I have found crab meat. So it's 8 ounces of crab meat. To that, you use 8 ounces of shredded cheese. This is actually goat's cheese that I used a week or so ago. I grate my own cheese with a box grater, and because the pre-shredded cheese all has starches and bad stuff in it. So this is, I don't even remember what kind it is, but it's a mixture of goat's cheese, and to that I'm adding some mozzarella cheese because who doesn't love mozzarella cheese? And it will make it a little stringy as the mozzarella melts, which I love. And to that, we add 3 tablespoons of mayo. I have my homemade mayo. I'll link to the recipe below. Now, when I am baking for cakes and all that, I'm very precise in my measurements. When I'm making this, I am not as precise. So you're going to say, that's way more than 3 tablespoons. Yeah, probably. It works for me. To that, we have a teaspoon of garlic powder, a half a cup of chopped scallions. You know that I normally weigh all of my food. I did not weigh this. These are scallions. I used two of these. They're pretty big. I used 2. It might be a little more than a half a cup, but it'll be good. So here are my scallions, and I like hot things, so had a jalapeno in our garden that was going to go bad, so this is just like a half of a jalapeno from our garden chopped. I took the seeds out because I didn't want the seeds in the crab pie, and that's where a lot of the heat is in the seeds, so we'll see how that goes. I'm just going to mix this up a little. And to this, you add 2 eggs. Beat them up a little here. And now you mix this really well. So that's all mixed up. I'm going to set that aside because this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to make a crust with eggs. So I'm going to do eggs, egg white powder, garlic powder, salt, and see if I can make a pie crust out of that. And I'm just making this up as I go, so I don't know how it's going to turn out, and I don't know if these are the right amounts, but I have 2 egg whites in here, which I'm going to whip up. To this I have a tablespoon of egg white powder, 1/4 teaspoon of gelatin, a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and I'm going to mix all of that together. And since this is not for a PSMF day, it's not a totally low-fat day, I'm adding the egg yolks to give it a little more texture. So you just mix the egg yolks, add that to the egg whites, and you fold it in. Yes, I'm using a spoon. I have much better feel with a spoon. Yes, you're probably supposed to use a spatula. I apologize for the noise if it's noisy, but I have a much better feel with a spoon. And this is what we're going to do. We have, I think this is a 9-inch pie plate. This is actually came from my mother when I bought my house, my first house in 1980, so that's a long, long time ago. I got a lot of her old pans, and I got this from her back then, so this is probably at least 50 years old. I'm going to spray it well because I don't want it to stick. I'm actually going to make sure it's all well coated. First I thought about putting a parchment paper round on the bottom, and I thought, well, when I cut into it, it's just going to be difficult. So let's see. I don't even know if I'm going to use all of this because I've never done this before. And I don't want it really thick. I just want a thin layer. If this works, oh boy, I have lots of ideas for it. Now I'm trying to do more dinners because I've done a lot of sweets and they're fun to make, but in reality, we don't eat a lot of sweets. So I'm trying to do more of how we actually eat, but it's nice to have sweet recipes there for when you want them. Now what I'm going to do, I have the oven on at 325. I'm just going to bake this for 5 minutes because if I were to put the filling in now, it's too soft. So I thought, well, let me try cooking it for 5 minutes, and maybe that might give us a good enough base to then add the filling. So I'll see you back in 5 minutes. So this was in the oven for 5 minutes, and as you can see at 325 Fahrenheit, as you can see, it's no longer liquidy. It's a little bit firm, so we're gonna put the filling in. I think you could probably do this with canned salmon as well. Sometimes the canned salmon is more easy to find than crab meat. So what we're going to do is put this into a 350 Fahrenheit oven for 45 minutes. And that's so that the egg cooks and the cheese melts. So I am a little worried about the crust being in that high of a temperature for that long, and then it has to cool a bit. So I'm going to be putting this in for 45 minutes. I'm going to take it out and let it cool for 15 minutes. So we'll be back in an hour. Well, the pie was in the oven for 45 minutes. It's been sitting for 10 minutes, and I'm going to see how it goes. It looks like this crust may work. All right. Whoa, look at that. It came out. The crust is there. Let's try it. Try a piece with a bit of the crust. It worked out well with the crust. This is delicious. Oh my. Even if you made it without a crust, it's amazing. With the crust, it's just a little added dimension. So, I no longer can call it crustless keto crab meat pie. It's just a crab meat pie. So enjoy.